So good morning to all our viewers and welcome to this very important press conference. A special good morning to all the media representatives who are with us in-house and those of you who are joining us via the Zoom platform. I am Sherry-Ann Noel, your host for this morning's press conference. The objective is to bring the members of the media and also the general public up to date on the progress thus far with reference to the decriminalization of cannabis. And to do that, on the head table, I have with me, to my immediate left, the Honorable Lennox Andrews. He's the Minister for Agriculture, Lands and Forestry. Senator, the Honorable Claudette Joseph, Minister for Legal Affairs and Attorney General. Mr. Anselm Clouden, the Chairman of the Cannabis Working Committee. We also have Ms. Nandi Noel. She's the Chief Executive Officer at the Cannabis Secretariat. Ms. Natalie Williams, she is the Assistant Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Forestry. And also in the room to lend support, we have ACP Vanny Cohen and Mr. Michael Batiste, who is a representative from the Rastafarian community. We're going to get straight into it, and I'm going to invite first to the microphone our Minister, Honorable Lennox Andrews, who will share an opening statement as it relates to government's approach. Minister Andrews.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Noel. And I want to recognize our Attorney General, Ms. Claudette Joseph, our Assistant Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mrs. Natalie Williams, our Chairman of the Cannabis Commission, Mr. Anselm Clouden, members, Mrs. Nandi Noel, CEO of the Cannabis Secretariat, other members of the Cannabis Secretariat, other members of staff of the Ministry of Agriculture, fellow Grenadians. A pleasant morning to all of you at home and abroad. Ever since taking office, there have been widespread and pervasive discussions on government's commitment to fulfilling its mandate of decriminalizing marijuana here in Grenada. This morning, I am happy to be joined by our Attorney General and the members of the Cannabis Commission and its Secretariat to update you on our mandate by bringing to you the bill for the decriminalization of marijuana in our country. Today, therefore, marks a transformative milestone in our nation's journey towards a more just, evidence-based, and responsible approach to cannabis. For decades, our approach to cannabis was characterized by rigid prohibition, a system that was prone to causing lasting social damage and disproportionate harm to our young people in particular. And so today, we move away from that era of prohibition, guided by the exhaustive consultations with the Cannabis Working Committee, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and our fellow citizens. Today, our government and your government is evolving beyond the old ways of thinking. We are replacing a broken system of criminalization with a modern, well-regulated framework, one that prioritizes the health of individuals and safety of our youth, while finally unlocking the therapeutic and economic power for all Grenadians. This bill to be presented to the Parliament of this country is grounded in three main pillars. Pillar number one, restorative justice and social equity. Our first priority is social justice and equity. This bill is a tool to rectify the past. We are providing amnesty and the expungement of records for cannabis offenses that falls within the specifications of the bill. We believe that a past mistake should not be a permanent barrier to an individual's progress. Furthermore, we are upholding the constitutional rights of our Rastafarian community, recognizing the right to use cannabis as a sacred sacrament within the places of worship. Pillar number two, personal rights and public safety. Our second priority is towards individual rights and public safety. This is a measured shift, not an introduction to an unrestricted market. And I want to repeat this. This is a measured shift, not an introduction to an unrestricted market. We are decriminalizing marijuana to individuals aged 21 and older. We are also decriminalizing the possession of up to 56 grams of cannabis and 15 grams of cannabis resin for private use. We are also permitting registered household cultivation of 4 plants. This ensures adults can address their personal health needs in privacy without fear of arrest. However, we remain vigilant. We have established a fixed penalty fine system for the public use of cannabis and created a rehabilitative framework for our youth. To those who would exploit our children, I say to you, be warned. The penalties for supplying minors with cannabis remain severe. We choose counseling over criminalization for our youth, but we also choose strict enforcement for the protectors. Pillar number 3, Grenadians' first industry. Looking ahead, our good intention is to build a national asset. Through the Cannabis Commission, we are designing a legal industry, medicinal, agro-processing, and research that prioritizes local benefits in a Grenadian first industry. And therefore, as I close, I would like to end as I've started. And I want to say this. This bill represents a paradigm shift, a change in the status quo, a break with the past, a new construct, which when passed in Parliament will become the new conventional wisdom regarding our attitudes and our approach and of our image towards marijuana in this country. I therefore call on all Grenadians to be familiar with this bill. Discuss it among yourselves, for it would form the basis for the identification and development of a new area of economic activity that would increase our income, employment, and output. So we have done the foundational work. So let us now all work together to build a country, build our country, and to make Grenada a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Minister. And as he has mentioned, the decriminalization of marijuana, it has been on the front burner of the administration since they took office in 2022. Information is that the bill is ready to be presented to Parliament. It will be grounded within 3 main pillars. We heard decriminalization age 21 and over, 4 plants per household, and the Grenadian first industry. To move further, because we're speaking to bill and policy, and so I'd like to invite to the microphone the Senator, the Honorable Claudette Joseph, who is our Attorney General. Senator Joseph.
Thank you, Sherry-Ann. And again, Happy New Year. All the best for 2026 to all our cherished members of the media and to all persons listening on whatever platform you may be tuned in. I'm sure we have lots of people tuned in for this very significant, indeed historic press conference. From since 2018, CARICOM had commissioned a report by a committee headed by Professor Dr. Rosemary Antoine, senior lecturer, I think now principal of UWI Trinidad. And the recommendation then out of the Cannabis CARICOM report was for the decriminalization and, where appropriate, legalization of cannabis and cannabis resin. Since then, several Caribbean jurisdictions have adopted the recommendations coming out of that CARICOM report. In fact, most jurisdictions have. Grenada is one of the last jurisdictions to now move in the direction of the decriminalization of cannabis and ultimately the establishment of a medical cannabis industry. And of course, many other countries of the world have done so. Canada being one of the more well-known countries, they were early up. And we have Germany, the Netherlands also very early. Certain states in the United States. And in fact, only a few weeks ago, President Trump signed an executive order, that was like 2 weeks ago, signed an executive order that on a federal level moved cannabis from a Schedule 1 controlled substance to a Schedule 3, which implies that it is not as strictly, it will not be going forward, as strictly controlled, even in the US federally, than it has been in the past. So it's no longer in the category with the other serious, more potent drugs, such as cocaine and so on. The reason for that is that there is now well-established and acknowledged evidence, research-based evidence of the medicinal value that cannabis possesses for persons suffering with various ailments, ranging from certain types of cancers to neurological conditions, epilepsy, and related afflictions. So, in Grenada, we are getting on board, some may say belatedly, but we are getting on board with what is now accepted as international standards in relation to the decriminalization of cannabis. We also know that locally, on the ground here, we have a culture of the use of cannabis for religious and sacramental purposes, in the case of the Rastafarian movement, and for recreational purposes in small quantities, in the case of the certain segments of the wider population. All of us know someone who does that. So what we are doing by this amendment to the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, that's the act that criminalizes certain dangerous and controlled substances. And cannabis is there provided for in the legislation. The adjustment is made based on the scientific information we have. It is not, as the minister said, it is not open season, it is not permitting unlimited use, and it's certainly not encouraging abuse. So under the legislation, cannabis will still be a controlled substance. As obtains now, we go to Parliament next Tuesday in the lower house to debate the bill. There has been, from since late 2022 into early 2023, thereabouts, significant consultations with the public by the committee established at the cabinet level. I know the committee has traversed the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique for the last 2+ years, engaging in consultations. And I can tell you, at the level of the Office of the Attorney General, we have gone through several drafts and revised drafts of this legislation, engaging expert consultants in the area, persons who have worked with other jurisdictions in passing legislation relating to the decriminalization of cannabis and the establishment of medical cannabis industries. And Mr. Clouden and Nandi and the minister can attest that at times we got very, very heated when we disagreed on what the legislation should contain, because we are all very passionate about this and want to ensure that we amend our Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act in a way that will protect our people, that will be in the best interest of our people, especially our young people. So there were occasions when we did not see eye to eye on how we might amend the law, and so we had to go back and forth and discuss and debate until we got to a point where we could find common ground. So I assure the public that the legislation that we are going to be tabling in Parliament on Tuesday is well researched, well reasoned, well debated, and went through several formations and permutations, and even the public might actually have out there a different version, because we know we circulated drafts from time to time, but we have now settled on a draft that will, in the first instance, seek to treat with our own people and to decriminalize cannabis in small quantities, and to start to begin the process, which will also have to engage some mental rearrangement of seeing cannabis as only bad. And so a lot of our young people we know have come into conflict with the law and have racked up criminal convictions for possession of cannabis in quantities so small that in other advanced and even in other neighboring Caribbean countries will not be an offense. We know what happens when we have a criminal offense. Certain things, you have hindrances towards achieving. So having a criminal offense, especially a drug-related criminal offense, a record, really adversely affects our young people, particularly our young men. And so there are certain jobs they can't apply for because of the record. There are certain advancements in terms of migration and so they will not qualify for because of the record. And their life is really badly affected by a criminal record. So we are adjusting the legislation. I'll just point to some significant areas. Mr. Clouden will fill in as the chairman of the committee. But at present, possession of cannabis in any quantities, cannabis or cannabis resin, and the resin is the cannabis oil, if you want to put it in simple language. And possession of cannabis or cannabis resin in any quantities right now is a criminal offense, attracting up to $250,000 fine or imprisonment for, 7 years? Thereabouts.
5
so
years.
5 years, okay. and on summary conviction.
On summary, yeah.
Right, 5 years. So it's a very serious offense that could land you in a lot of trouble. Any quantities. So 1 spliff. In fact, I know recently I was chatting with a young man up to 2 days ago who recently lost his job because of 1 spliff. 1 spliff. And just trying to get on his feet, turn around his life, he get a little work. He has a marijuana cigarette. And he lost his job. That happened recently. So this is a real problem that some of our young people face. So we are going to adjust the 5th schedule to the legislation to allow for persons to possess up to 56 grams. So we're moving from 0 to 56 grams of cannabis. Anything between 56 and 70 grams, you are, that would now be possession. Now, the way the legislation is set up, you have possession and then you have trafficable quantities. Right now, 15 grams or more, if you found with that, so that qualifies as 1 spliff, you are presumed to be trafficking, right? So we are increasing the quantity for possession and consequently the quantity for trafficking. So 56 grams or less, no offense is committed. You are permitted to possess 56 grams or less. When you go over that, that's when you start committing an offense, right? Either possession or trafficking. Possession between 57 and 70, and trafficable 71 and up, right? So people need to understand that to some extent it is still an offense to go outside what is permitted or what will be permitted under this new legislation. Persons will be permitted to have 4 or more plants per household, not per person in the house. So if you have 4 people in the house, don't go planting 16 trees, because you would be committing an offense. 4 plants or less per household. After that, you are liable to the same offenses as now obtains for possession or trafficking. And you got to go and get Mr. Clown to help you, as usual, right?
In this case, it would be cultivation.
Yes.
Not necessarily trafficking.
Trafficking, right. Cultivation, right. And so this is what we are doing. Smoking in public places will be an offense, a fixed penalty offense. So if you are found smoking in public places or in possession in public places, no, not possession, smoking in public places, it will be an offense, and you'll get a ticket, and that ticket would be $300, and if you don't pay the ticket and you go to court, it goes up to $5,000. So just letting people know these basic things. When we go to Parliament Tuesday, there will be more expounding as to what are public places. I think we have a general idea what a public place is, but it's defined in the new legislation. And importantly, I'll just make the last point, importantly, in relation to persons who have prior convictions for possession in small quantities, we have inserted a provision there for your record for convictions of cannabis, of possession of cannabis 56 grams or less, to be automatically expunged on the passing of this legislation, or for cultivation of 4 or less plants, or for possession of any pipe, instrument, or apparatus fit and intended for the preparation and use of cannabis raising. So these records, those of you who have current records for cannabis in small quantities, these records will be expunged once the legislation is passed. So I know we would free up and liberate a lot of our young people, particularly our young men, with this provision. But of course, to get a document or a record showing that your record has been expunged, you will have to make a formal application to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Board. But the way we've set it up, you will not have to go through the normal procedure and the wait time, and so that applies to the board when persons apply for their records to be expunged for the various criminal matters applicable to that law. You make the application, and it's expunged on paper. Okay, so you wouldn't have to go and make your case as now obtains. Once your conviction was for possession of a quantity less than 56 grams, or cultivation of 4 plants or less, or possession of pipe, instrument, or apparatus. And finally, the Rastafari. We have provision in the legislation that speaks to Rastafari being permitted to use the holy herb without stress from Babylon. Right? Mr. Cohen not smiling. So I think the Rastafari movement have for many, many years advocated that cannabis is a sacramental substance for them. Just as in the Catholic Church we use incense, it's a sacramental substance for them. And the criminalization of that substance constitutes discrimination against them. So the Rastafarians are now relieved that in the circumstances of this legislation, they will have the permission to use their holy substance. So there are some more matters, but I'm going to let Mr. Clouden speak, because I know he has quite a bit to tell us. He's a happy guy this morning. He has been one of the premier advocates in Grenada for the decriminalization of cannabis, especially in small quantities. So this is what I would stop here at the moment and let Mr. Clouden speak and answer any of your questions that you will have subsequent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on, Sherry.
I'm okay now. See it afar. I have seen it in dreams. How gladly I see it today. This legislation is a momentous statute. This bill has its genesis in the CARICOM recommendation, as so eloquently articulated by the learned and distinguished Attorney General. And of course, the Minister himself spoke to the importance of protecting the integrity of our young people. And I think good recognition ought to be given to them in that regard. Now, this government made a pledge to the people, and it was a noble pledge, because we were lagging in the implementation of the CARICOM recommendation that was made sometime in 2018 or thereabout. And they had the fortitude to pledge to the people that upon assuming office, such as they did, they would decriminalize marijuana and bring an ease, as it were, to the criminal justice system that had acted for so long, perpetrating injustice to our young people. They were in prison, and as the Attorney General has indicated, they were saddled with a criminal record which inhibited their ability to access higher institutions and travel. Because when you had that stigma on your application for a job, you were immediately disqualified. You weren't even invited to an interview. Such was the horror of that system that this government has begun to liberate. So that, whereas in the past, as the Attorney General has so succinctly put, for one marijuana cigarette, you were subject to a draconian penalty of $250,000 or 5 years in jail. Those circumstances, and I have done so many of them, if even the magistrate was sort of considerate, recognizing the widespread use of cannabis by our young people, they would show some compassion by reducing the fine, because the fine was accompanied by a period of incarceration if it wasn't paid. So that, thank God, we have gone past that. We now have what is called a fixed penalty fine, which of course doesn't necessarily criminalize the offender. He's obligated to pay a fine, and that's about it. So there's been tremendous relief in this bill. It's a good starter, because most importantly, and I say it would come in incrementally, gradually. We've started decriminalizing. We are the last of the OECS bunch to do so. But we have done it, and credit ought to go to the government of the day for taking this bold step. But there's a lot more to do, because apart from the employment that this industry would create for the country, the Honorable and Distinguished Minister of Agriculture is himself an economist, so he no doubt would appreciate that if we can get our medicinal cannabis industry going, we all three, the learned Attorney General, the Minister of Agriculture, and myself, had the advantage of visiting St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where their medicinal cannabis industry is indeed the most progressive in the entire Eastern Caribbean, including Jamaica. I see Barbados has started recently, and they had quite a celebration when they established their medicinal cannabis industry. This is a multi-million business, and it is precisely for this reason that the President of the United States of America, President Trump, as the Attorney General had alluded to, moved cannabis from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. And the raison d'etre of that is to develop a comprehensive medicinal cannabis industry. The President himself said that a number of people were coming to him ill, sick, and he found it appropriate to bring relief to them. So that we have to move with dispatch, with alacrity, with strong legislation to introduce a medicinal cannabis industry to our country. It would create tremendous employment, As a matter of fact, it would be consistent with the climate change jurisprudence that's now developing, climate resilience and the like. It would be healthy, it would boost our agriculture because license could be tied to production of vegetables and the like. It could have a spin-off effect with the hotels and the like. Agriculture would begin to accelerate with a medicinal cannabis industry for Grenada. And I'm encouraging, I guess, in the second term of this government, I expect them to embark on the comprehensive cannabis industry. Thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clouden, there for that presentation. And now we're going to move over to the Chief Executive Officer at the Cannabis Secretariat, Ms. Nandi Noel, for her remarks. Ms. Noel?
All right, thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. With protocol already established, I'd just like to reiterate the head table stance that this paradigm shift is indeed critical, namely considering that we need to shift our thinking of cannabis, a drug, to cannabis, a plant that has many benefits. On that note, the core intent of today's session is to be absolutely clear on what the proposed amendments of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Bill is and what it is not. Indeed, the head table would have covered all of this thoroughly, so I'm just going to summarize really quickly to ensure that we're clear. The Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Bill is not full legalization, and it does not create an anything-goes recreational market. It is not a license for public smoking. Public use or public consumption shall be an offense subject to a $300 fine. We have strict no-go zones around schools and other prohibited public places listed in the bill. It is not for minors. Access remains strictly prohibited for anyone under the age of 21, and adults who supply them shall face severe criminal penalties. And the proposed bill shall not go unregulated, as it is the first step towards a strict, comprehensive, and multi-tiered system meant to oversee our cannabis industry. In contrast, the amendment of the bill proposes the following: the decriminalization of possession of cannabis of up to 56 grams and up to 15 grams of cannabis resin for adults aged 21 and over. The bill proposes religious recognition via social equity, providing a legal basis for Rastafari groups to use and cultivate cannabis as a sacrament in their registered places of worship. The bill also proposes registered household cultivation, where adults may cultivate up to 4 plants per household for their private therapeutic, medicinal, and horticultural purposes. But furthermore, and most importantly, the bill prohibits such activities in households that serves as spaces for childcare, especially during their hours of operation. The bill further proposes acts of social justice, where measures for expungement of past criminal records shall be expunged, and it shall also halt any pending court cases where offenses fall within the specifications of this bill. But most importantly, the bill leans heavily on the protection of our young persons and our children. We're moving away from a system that labels a young person as a criminal for the rest of their life, and instead, for anyone under the age of 21, this proposed system replaces criminal records with a restorative approach. If cannabis is found in the possession of any young person under the age of 21, it shall be confiscated, and mandatory drug counseling, education, and rehabilitation shall proceed. And if necessary, any referrals will be made to the Child Protection Authority. For your edification, the bill shall be posted online, and as always, the Cannabis Commission is open to your concerns and your feedback. It doesn't matter if when the bill is passed, even thereafter. It's important for our M&E that we constantly gauge the public and we constantly gauge the economy and the industry to ensure that when we get to the second pillar that our minister would have spoken on earlier, that we can do it ensuring that every Grenadian has a voice and it's well suited to fit where we are. So before I conclude, I'd like to extend and really recognize and say thank you to the team. And it starts from the very top with our members of cabinet. We've gone through many iterations, long, tedious conversations, deep research. We've listened to the public. We've gathered your stories to get to this point. Most especially with the work that the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the AG has extended to us. Under the steadfast leadership of our Minister with responsibility for agriculture, Minister Lennox Andrews, thank you so much. This thanks also extends to the Ministry of Agriculture, which the Commission is housed under, starting from our Permanent Secretary, Mr. Isaac Bagwan, our Assistant Permanent Secretary, PS Natalie Williams, who's with us today, to our chair on the commission, Mr. Anselm Clouden. ACP Cohen, thank you so much. As Assistant Commissioner of Police, it's so important that we had his voice on board. And also the representative from our Rastafari groups, Mr. Michael Batiste. Not with us today, but also a vital part of our team is Miss Betty Ann Lazarus. She is our PR engine room. So thank you so much, Miss Lazarus. Also, Dr. Sean Charles, our Chief Medical Officer, our representative on the commission from the Ministry of Health, and Mr. Josh Hector, psychologist and Director of Substance Use and Mental Health. It was so important that we put together this multifaceted team to ensure that as much as possible, every aspect would have been covered and was definitely covered during our conversation. So thank you so much. Extended to the team, thank you so much, at the Cannabis Secretariat, Ms. Judy Antoine, our PRO, and our Assistant Administrative Officer, Ms. Lisa Drew. So thank you so much for everything. So in conclusion, just to draw everything in, our goal essentially is to ensure that Grenada's cannabis laws are globally compliant, but most importantly, that it is locally transformative as we collectively build a system that is more equitable, safe, more just, and profoundly beneficial for the well-beings of all Grenadian citizens. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Noel, and I know that a lot has been said, so at this time I would like to open the floor to members of the media who are here present to pose their questions to the head table. We will begin with the members I should say in-house before we go to those via the Zoom platform. Our first question would come from the Grenada Broadcasting Network. I saw Mr. Alexis' hand is in the air.
Yes, under the policy, I'm not sure who's going to answer it, but under the policy objective for license, private and agricultural cultivation, will the license be granted to individual, groups, or organization? Second question.
One moment, Mike, before you go, maybe we can rest one of the mics in front of you and just put it on so that we can get the clean audio. So if you just use that mic and rest it there. So you can. Right, so maybe you should repeat the question. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, just quickly 2 questions. Under the policy objective, the license that is going to be issued, will it be for private groups or organizations for the cultivation of the the cannabis? And secondly, would the government be engaging with organization, and seeing that it is new to us, most likely it might be foreign organization for medicinal purposes as well as for agro processing? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great questions. But I'd like to just reiterate what the minister would have said earlier, that we have 2 phases. The first phase of our implementation is mainly focused on the decriminalization for spiritual use and for private therapeutic use. So all the questions that you've asked would fall under our phase 2, which is the need to build a robust cannabis industry with the benefits for Grenadians first. So now to directly answer your questions. For this phase and phase 1, and under the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Bill, we'd have two different types of registration systems. So we're not talking about licensing just yet. The first sort of registration system would go for our Rastafari groups. And kindly note that any sort of registration and licensing system that we introduce under the cannabis industry is not meant to control, but it's meant to keep all of the licensees safe and to help us monitor whatever activities that they're doing for their safety. So it's not meant to control. So the first registration would be for a household. We're asking that when we get to that point of implementation, that if any individuals are interested, to sending our registration form, our secretariat would send out information so that everyone would have access to it and they'll know exactly what steps to take. The second registration system would be for our Rastafari groups. As the head table would have stated quite clearly earlier, social justice and social equity is a big part of what we're doing. It falls under the objectives of our policy statement. And again, it's not meant to control, but to help protect. And also, it is a religious right that is a vital part of our constitution. So I hope that covers your questions.
No, actually,
Let me
no, actually, you spoke of registration, but I'm speaking about license for cultivation.
Okay, let me attempt to answer the question. As Ms. Noel indicated, we are going to be decriminalizing cannabis and establishing a licensing regime, licensing and regulatory regime for the establishment of a medical cannabis industry in 2 phases. So this we are launching here today and will be debated in Parliament is phase 1. And what phase 1 does is to decriminalize in quantities of 56 grams or less in the case of cannabis and 15 grams or less in the case of cannabis resin. And it confers certain rights, so to speak, for households to have up to 4 plants, for Rastafari to engage in use for spiritual, sacramental purposes. But this legislation also proposes at Section 13D for the minister to develop, of course with his team, to develop legislation to provide for the establishment of a lawful, regulated cannabis industry for medicinal, therapeutic, and scientific purposes, and for religious purposes. So that will occur in stage 2. And that legislation, that bespoke legislation to be developed, will provide for such matters such as the power to issue licenses, permits, and other authorizations, and the procedure for governing applications for such licenses, permits, and other authorizations. It will also treat with the criteria for the issuance of such licenses and authorization, including the terms and conditions under which they may be granted, the procedure to be complied with by holders of such licenses to ensure compliance with this act and any other legislation that may be subsequently enacted. So, in essence, this deals with the decriminalization. It adjusts the quantities that are that will attract a charge for possession or trafficking. It deals with expungement of record, and as Ms. Noel also pointed out, discontinuance of pending cases before the court now that will fall under the ambit of this legislation. So this is really phase 1. Phase 2, broader legislation will go into the establishment of the medical cannabis industries, which will deal with things like licenses and permits and so for cultivation, and manufacturing of byproducts and so. So I hope that clarifies it. Thank you.
Any other questions from in-house? We move to Crystalina.
Morning again to everyone at the health table. My question is there a permissible amount for the Rastafarians, Rastafarian organization to have within the Colitor service? And should the police meet with one who is going to assemble with a certain quantity of cannabis, would there be an exemption for that individual?
The second question.
Yeah. Should the police say stop you en route to your gathering as a Rastafarian with a certain quantity for the sacramental purposes, would there be an exemption for that?
Okay, so I'll only be able to answer this question in partiality. I'd let the AG and Mr. Clouden follow up on any holes that I might miss. So to answer your first question, we have not set any limits for the Rastafari with regard to their cultivation and their use, which is why it's so important for us to have a thorough registration of all of the Rastafari places of worship. Again, our intent is not to control, but to aid in protection and to aid for them to practice their sacrament as freely and as safely as possible. And for the second question, with regards to exemptions, you're asking if a Rastafari individual is on the way to an event. So this is a twofold answer to a question, and I hope I can cover it as succinctly as possible. The intent is, and it's written in the bill, that the minister shall be empowered to offer exemptions for events. In that case, I think maybe the AG and Mr. Clouden will be able to fill in a bit more on how those exemptions would particularly work. But apart from sacrament and apart from special event exemptions, Rastafari individuals would fall into the bracket of every other citizen, whereas if you're traveling on any given day, you're still limited to carry up to 56 grams of cannabis and up to 15 grams of cannabis resin.
Yeah, so again too, that's correct as Mr. Clouden says. But once you peruse this legislation, you would realize it is really a first step, because in all instances, it speaks to there being subsequent and coming up shortly further legislation and regulations that will set out the procedure and guidelines under which the Rastafarian faith may be able to use the cannabis as permitted by the legislation. So as we indicated, in terms of the Rastafari, this legislation sets the foundation. It sets the foundation, so it makes it clear where government is going. There has to be further legislation to cover the establishment of the medical cannabis industry, to cover the licensing and regulatory regime. So as we said, it's a two-step process. So in this legislation, you will not yet find all the details that will be attaching to, especially Rastafari, in their use of cannabis as a sacramental and religious substance.
Just before I go off, now 4 plants would be allowed per household. What if that 4 plants give you more than 56 grams?
Good question. Just make sure that you do not have on your person at any given time more than 56 grams. So if your 4 plants give you more than 56 grams, keep it in the privacy of your home.
Do we have any more questions from in-house? MTV?
Good morning, Troy Gill, MTV News. My first question, are you in a position to give a figure or an amount as to how many Grenadians are currently burdened with a criminal record for minor possession offenses? And my second question, with regards to children and youth under a certain age, if they are found, based on what I would have read, so is that still a work for law enforcement, or is it because there would not be a charge, there would not be an arrest? So who would be taking the lead with regards to that?
Act that would take care, sorry, yeah, thank you. You have a juvenile act, okay, that takes care of juveniles who create an offense or is culpable. The procedure is laid down there, and they come to court, and you have a juvenile court that sits on a certain day. So irrespective of the offense, once the classification is juvenile, then it is accorded a specific treatment as prescribed in the Juveniles Act. Okay?
If I may add,
Sure.
you finished?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. If I may add, recall under this legislation, the persons permitted to possess 56 grams or less are persons 21 and above. And in our deliberations, we did contemplate the situation where persons 18 years, between 18 and 21, would be found in possession. And of course, in terms of who would find them in possession, that would ordinarily fall to law enforcement in the ordinary performance of their duties. And the legislation provides for confiscation and counseling where deemed necessary, but not creation of a criminal offense, not charging them with a criminal offense. So it would not be a criminal offense, because of course it wouldn't make sense for it not to be a criminal offense for people 21 and above, but a criminal offense for people who are also adults between 18 and 20. So it would be confiscation, and where deemed appropriate, referral to counseling and necessary treatment if that is deemed appropriate. For persons who are children, so that's 18 years and below, if they are found in possession of cannabis, cannabis 56 grams or less. Let me ensure I specify that, because above that you are entering into the realm of ordinary criminality, and the provisions of the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act will kick in. And so those minors, people 18 years or younger, will be referred to the Child Protection Authority. Of course, in addition to confiscation, they will be referred to the Child Protection Authority for necessary guidance. So that's how it is treated in the legislation. I hope that answers your question. Nandi, you want to add something?
Yes, please. So to answer your first question, that's a great question with regards to the number of Grenadians that are burdened with criminal records. It's something that we would have to pick up at the Secretariat to get those figures for you. And would have to publish just for your edification and for the public's edification as well. And to add to who would be burdened, with the fines and the ticketing system, ACP, I hope you can back me up on this when I say that it won't be a criminal offense. It would be treated similarly to the way traffic tickets are handled. It's an administrative process where if the police notices that an individual falls within or outside of the stipulations of the bill, then they would be empowered on the administrative processes that would follow next.
No, I think, good morning, everybody. I think Ms. Noel has sufficiently addressed and answered that particular question. But I'm getting a sense that your question is asking who has the responsibility to deal with young people. Section 6 of the Act speaks to the referral process, where the police is going to now refer that young person to the Child Protection Authority. And there are a number of steps that the Child Protection Authority is empowered to take under the Act. So it's a referral system. The police will still get involved if we have to, but there wouldn't be arrest and charge, there wouldn't be ticketing if you're under the age. There'll be a referral system. Child Protection Authority will pick it up from there. I think that's what you're asking.
Thank you very much, ACP. We don't have any questions from I'm seeing Nisha Paul's hand is up, so we're going to take our first question from Nisha Paul via the Zoom platform. Nisha, go right ahead. Nisha Paul, go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Yes, we are hearing you. Go right ahead with your question.
Okay. Is there a timeline for the development of the additional bills for the rollout of phase 2 of this initiative? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Another great question. Yes, there is a timeline. We're working with 3 to 6 months following the passing of this cannabis decriminalization bill. So we're going to follow as such in phase 2, as the head table would have spoken on earlier, where we would build out a national policy framework for the cannabis industry, and it will entail picking a model that best suits us. Once we have that framework as a policy, it shall dictate the administration, and as such, it shall dictate the building out of the cannabis industry bill and regulations and guidelines to follow.
Nisha, do you have a second question?
Just for clarity, and how I'm speaking about in terms of how long will it take for that process to unfold? And when can we expect to see it, being action taken?
So as I would have said earlier, 3 to 6 months until we have a policy framework in hand and until we have the draft cannabis bill in hand.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to those of you media persons here present and those of you via the Zoom platform. We have literally come to the end of this very important press conference, but before we wrap, I would like to give the Honorable Minister the opportunity to give some closing remarks.
Thank you again, Ms. Noel, and thanks for all of you. Thanks to the head table for the contributions. Thanks for all of you who asked questions. And the second phase of the marijuana bill is extremely important for us from an economic point of view. It is that one that will allow for the development of an industry that can contribute to our country's development. Our government approach to development is that we have to, on a continuous basis, identify new areas of economic activity if we are to broaden our economic base and provide more income, employment, and output for our people. We've started, first of all, with the creative industry. Good. We also would have established the blue economy, and now we are moving swiftly to establish a marijuana cannabis industry that can expand our country economic base, create more opportunities for our young people in particular, and to help to transform our economy. The cannabis industry, I have to say, is a big thing. It's a very, very big thing. I don't know to the extent to which we in Grenada are aware of the amount of work and the amount of studies, the amount of research that is now being undertaken in that industry. That industry has its own set of professionals, its own set of people working on it. I would have met a young Dominican, PhD, who has institutions set up in Jamaica, and he has a whole team with him, and he's conducting research on marijuana. Yeah. So I'm saying that to say that we have to now open our minds and think differently, and don't see cannabis, don't see marijuana as something bad. It is good. There are people who are investing millions of dollars in the industry. Maybe it would be useful for our people to maybe take a trip to St. Vincent and to see the progress that has been made there and that is being made there, and the level of investment that is taking place there in that marijuana industry. So, as I said in my opening statement, this bill represents a paradigm shift. It's a new construct, and in years to come, we're going to have a new conventional wisdom as regards marijuana and its use and its importance for humanity. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Joseph, would you like to?
Had questions, and we've already gone over time, so I think it's fair that we allow the two persons who had questions.
Well, if we can address the questions quietly, if I may use. If
Okay.
you want. Oh, all right.
My apologies, I did not realize they were raised of hands for questions.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone, once more. Maybe my question, I think socially, we know that we've been told from maybe youth, cannabis is bad, stay away from it. What framework or what policies or what engagements do we have, or you guys have, that you roll out to break the stigma? It's a negative connotation, and I think in our culture, we have a suffocating mentality that when something is bad, stay away from it. Education is key. So how are we going to roll out and engage our youth, engage the older heads, I should say, sorry, to, come on the lighter side and realize, hey, this can be used for arthritis when I'm feeling a little bit sad,
Great question, thank you. But you answered your question in your question. We intend to, once we leave the room today, get started on a very rigorous public education campaign. There is so much more to cannabis than a puff and pass culture. As the ministers and the head table would have stated, in other Caribbean countries and internationally, globally, as a matter of fact, there's so much more that cannabis can offer. It's not just the medicinal benefits. We're not talking recreational, but there's also agri-processing involved. There's so much that we can get from it. We spoke about the medicinal benefits, but we're not yet talking about, and we should consider talking about, hemp and what those fibers can do, and the oils and what those oils can do, and the introduction into food and beverage and what that can mean for us, and even ecotourism and organic products that can come from this, companion planting, agriculture. So as you can see, the educational aspect of it would cover almost every different facet of society and social development, as we know, because it's so comprehensive, we can't afford to miss any one bit of it. So to answer your question with your question is by saying we're going to do this through public education.
And let me just add that the public education will, of course, recognize that in all of the scientific research and studies, we know, and it has been confirmed, that as with so many other substances, the abuse and misuse of cannabis can result in psychotropic and other issues for people. So public education will involve these matters as well head on. And that is why, even with the decriminalization, there are limitations. We have decriminalization in specific quantities, small quantities, and 56 grams. That's drawn directly from the recommendation of the CARICOM established committee that we spoke of earlier. And of course, you see the restrictions on use in public places, the limitation in terms of age, and so all through, there's a thread running through there that acknowledges that when abused, when misused, it can also have adverse impacts, and that will have to be part of our public education campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more question. As relates to previous offenders, you said there's going to be a board. Would this be a collaboration with the records office so the persons can make their applications, as well as would it be a physical building or something online?
So actually there is in existence since 2017 a Rehabilitation of Offenders Board. There is a Rehabilitation of Offenders Act which specifies certain offenses that might be expunged on application to that board. And that board is active, has been active for the last, since 2018 thereabouts, and has been expunging records for persons who committed certain minor offenses specified in that specific legislation. But it involves a process, an application, an actual hearing where the board sits. I think they meet once a month. At least once a month. They do meet and they sit and they hear and determine applications by persons who have convictions for offenses covered by the Act, mainly minor offenses. What we are doing in this instance is creating a shortcut for persons who have records, criminal records, involving possession of cannabis in amongst 56 grams or less, or cannabis resin in amongst 15 grams or less. So rather than having to go through the whole process of getting recommendation, because the whole process, you have people who make recommendations, so the board considered all your submissions, supporting documents. You have upstanding people in society who would write to the board in support of your application to say this is a good candidate for his record to be expunged and so on. We are not going to go through that lengthy process for persons with those records. They would make a simple application to the board, and once the board verifies based on the information submitted or its own inquiry from, say, the court as to the record of this person, once the board is satisfied that this is a conviction for a small amount, they would automatically expunge it without requiring the applicant to appear in person for a hearing and all of that. So that's what we've done.
Colin, you had a question?
Good morning. I don't want to prematurely start the debate, but I'm sure there's a gray area with regards to public space. So for instance, I'm in my private car in a public road. Now this is for the public. While I might know the answer to this question, I'm just putting it out there.
There isn't really a gray area actually, because public space is actually defined in the 9th schedule to the legislation. And it says, for example, any structure, facility, space used for gathering by individual or other place for use of, open to the public, or any other similar place accessible to the public. It includes bars, restaurants, clubs, outdoor dining spaces and service areas, tourist establishments, government offices, healthcare facilities, including pharmacies, sports, athletics, and other similar facilities for the use of the public, educational institution, bus stops, and departure and arrival waiting areas at any port or station for transportation, playing fields or other areas specifically used by children, residences and guest houses for use of staff employed there in beaches, parks, outdoor markets, and any other place or building of all types accessible to the public, including outdoor events or activities being used for gathering by individuals.
So
I give an example.
I think your question.
Private car.
You're in a private car.
Yes, a private car.
You're in a private car.
Yes.
So if you're in a private car and your glass, they're all up, so the effect is not felt outside. But that as it may, you're still in a public place. You're still in a public place, right? So I think the law should apply, officer. Yes, the law should apply.
Yes, Minister. I quite agree with you. While the car might be your private car, that car is in public space, and in that case, you're under the legislation.
So if I might just add, just to further answer your question, when you take a look at the bill, you'd note that it restricts use to your private space, and your private space is limited to your household.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if so, we are going to end this morning's press conference. I know we are going to get a final word from Senator Joseph.
Thank you, Sherian, and thank you very much to all members of the media who are in attendance. I think it is important as the Cannabis Committee rolls out its intensified PR campaign, because it has been an ongoing campaign and consultation and so over the last 2 years, but as it intensifies its campaign with the passage of this legislation, that you, the members of the media, become partners in this campaign by helping to inform and educate the public on the contents of this legislation, the benefits, the many well-established benefits to be derived from the establishment of a medical cannabis industry, the benefits to our population, especially our young population, on the passage and implementation of this legislation. So we are looking forward to doing this together as a nation, because we recognize that mindsets in some segments of our society, mindsets will have to be adjusted, and we as government and the committee alone will not be able to do that. We would need the support of you, the members of the media, to in helping us with that public education. So in that regard, we encourage you to remain engaged with us. Any questions you have, route through the committee. Some of you, I know some of you have my direct contact, no problem. If you have a question in terms of, especially if you need clarification and so on the legislation, reach out. If you have yourselves organize any public forum or participating in any public forum and you would need the support of the Ministry of Legal Affairs in helping to explain and discuss the legislation, we would be happy to support in this regard, because we are coming up, we are bringing up the rear in the Caribbean in terms of getting on board with the decriminalization and the establishment of a medical cannabis industry. But I think we are still in a good place to derive the many benefits that this move can result in. So thank you again, and I'm very pleased to be part of the government that has brought this to fruition for the people. I think, as Minister says, it's a big step. It's a step that should have been taken some time ago, and like with so many other things, we are happy to be able to deliver on those things that the people desire, that others were unable for some reason to deliver. We are happy to be the administration filled with action and can show tangible deliveries for our people in areas that they are very invested in and interested in. So thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Senator. And this is where we would come to the end of this press conference. We say once again a very special.
Under some pressure of a biological nature. Anyhow, let me say how thankful I am. And it is often said the media is the message, and you have a powerful message to disseminate to our people throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And they're looking forward to hearing from you. Have a blessed day.
And thank you very much. And we're finally coming to the end of this press conference. At the moment, we say a special thanks to everyone that was on the head table, the Honorable Lennox Andrews, Senator Claudette Joseph, Mr. Anselm Clouden, Ms. Nandi Noel, and support from ACP Corwin and Mr. Batiste, and also the Assistant Permanent Secretary, Ms. Natalie Williams. We urge you to stay tuned, pay attention, and as Senator said, come Tuesday, the bill will be tabled, in the lower house. So we look forward to the debate, and we look forward to continued information as they make strides on this very important policy. We speak to the decriminalization of cannabis. I am Sherry Noel, thanking you so much for viewing.